Hi folks, welcome to today's webinar on sports betting customer journey in Australia. We're just going to give it another 30 seconds before we kick start, waiting for a few people to register.
Okay, folks, I think we'll get started. It's time is money, and we want to be conscious of that. So to introduce ourselves, my name's Shay Pardis. I'm the Regional Commercial Director for Global Reviews and responsible directly for the sports betting industry, for Global Reviews that is. Today we're going to take you through our first webinar across the sports betting industry, and specifically looking at some insights that we could share with you around the consumer journey of potential sports betting customers. With me today is Jeremy Weinstein, our principal client advisor. Jeremy's across all our sports betting studies and working with clients across a number of different industries, including energy and insurance categories as well. So broad depth of knowledge with regards to customer journey and user experience. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jeremy. We've had a really good response to the session today, so we just want to get stuck into things. Jeremy, over to you.
Thank you very much, Shay. Hopefully everyone can hear us okay, and if they have any questions, they can type them out, and we'll try to respond to them at the end if we get a chance. So my name again, Jeremy Weinstein, Senior Client Advisor here at Global Reviews. So let's just get stuck into it. Very, very quickly, the sales pitch just to start with before we get stuck into the insights. Just some of the reasons companies subscribe to our data and our information. Essentially, we have data that can inform strategy, consumer and competitive intelligence, measure different customer experiences and channel performance across a range of channels. Currently, we're looking at the web channel, but we can also do offline channels such as call centers and branches if you have them. Also inform priorities for a digital program and assess best practice. And a lot of these brands here use us in a number of different ways and have for some time. Our broad question that we like to ask, and again, we pretty much come from the point of view of the customer. We are the customer advocate. We are the ones in the room whilst you're all trying to sell various products. We're the one who come in and try to say, well, hold on a second, that's all well and good, you want to sell that product, but how easy do you make it for the customer to buy that product? Or is that actually a product the customer wants to buy, or are you going about it the right way? So essentially, we ask, how easy is it to buy from you? And so we have a number of products that lead us to that answer. And essentially what we try to do is we look at the entire customer journey across these various stages. So we look at the discovery journey that people go on. So for example, they wake up one morning and they decide, I need to make a bet on my favourite sporting club because I've supported them for so long, but now I want to heighten the stakes. So we just try to understand how that discovery journey looks like. Where do they go? How do they find out what brands are available? How do they find out what sites are going to be the most useful for them, and so on. Then they go through a consideration. Well, they go, I've seen a few sites now, and that one looks better than that one, or I like that one, or whatever those considerations might be. And then into the act phase, where they actually make a bet and put their hard-earned down on a race or on a club, and actually go through with it. And those three stages initially are the journey. Obviously, then we look at some other aspects which we won't really talk about today, but the first part of that journey is what we've called marketing effectiveness. And we look at how well you can essentially drive potential consumers to your site, and then what they do in that consideration phase. So are you being considered once you've driven traffic there? If so, who are you being considered with? Who are your key competitors? What are you competing on? And do you have different competitive grounds for different competitors. So we're going to try to have a look at some of that today. And then there's a little bit later on, halfway through, I'll cover some of the sales effectiveness stuff, which is what happens once people already are on your site. So we essentially measure the journey of people who start on your homepage, and then we see how easy it is for them to actually get to a betting slip effectively and the payouts and so on. So that's the two aspects. The first one is the marketing effectiveness, and we'll just have a look at some of the way that we go about doing that. Essentially, we start with what we call a blank screen methodology. So with this one, we don't want to start consumers at a particular starting point, unlike the sales effectiveness where we essentially start them on a brand's homepage. Here we start with literally a blank screen, and we ask them this simple question. Your task is to do as much research as you need to identify a betting provider that allows you to place a sports bet online. So we try not to gear it too much. We try to use very generic type language. We don't try to force the consumer's hand in any way. And we then just essentially measure where they go. Prior to the task, we ask them a few questions about who they might know of, who they might be, who they might be able to recall, if they have any initial preferences, and if so, what those preferences are and why. And so just a few initial questions to understand what their state of mind is before they even get to doing the task. And then afterwards, so then we measure exactly where they go, the URLs they visit, Google, what search terms do they put in, what drives traffic where, and so on. We also have a look at the sites that people actually visit, and then we ask them some post-task questions in terms of who they would shortlist and who they would prefer, and so on. So here's some of the actual data. That's the setup. Here's the guts. So the first question we ask is a recall question. Who can you recall? And the number one brand that people can recall is Sportsbet. Nearly 70%, followed by Tab and Bet365, and so on down the list. And there's a much longer list. I'm just giving you a snapshot. And then we also ask people an awareness question. Now, the awareness question doesn't come till the very end, but we put them side by side because it's interesting to correlate these two numbers. So at the end, we give people a long list of actual sports betting providers, and we say, who do you remember? Which ones look familiar? And one thing that I noticed here was that Sportsbet have a very high awareness and a very high recall. So those that can actually who are aware of Sportsbet can also recall them quite easily. So that's good. That's probably got to do in some part with the name Sportsbet. That's what people are doing, betting on sports. So Sportsbet seems like a good name. But Bet365, although smaller, also has a very similar correlation in that awareness and recall are also very similar. So those who are aware of Bet365, when asked, at the man on the street, what brands can you recall, can recall those very similarly. On the flip side, Tab and Tom Waterhouse both have a very high awareness when people are presented with their name, but quite a low recall in comparison when people are asked to sort of name brands on the fly. So again, we could hypothesize about why that is the case. Maybe the Tom Waterhouse scandal made people aware of it, but not recall it off the top of the tip of their tongue. Again, similarly, neither of them have the word bet in it, and so on and so forth. But just interesting to understand the perceptions and the behaviour of consumers. The samples are representative samples, Australian demographics in terms of location and age, and they are also in-market customers. So these are actually people who have recently made a bet on sports or who have said that they are likely to in the not too distant future. So once that we've asked them those questions, we send them that on the task, and we have a look where they go. And so as you can see, not unsurprising, 49% of people go to search first and then a brand. So when presented with a blank screen, the majority of the people go to Google and then they type in maybe sports betting or bet on a sport or something along those lines, or a brand if they can recall one. And then they go to a brand. And here is the breakdown of the brands that they visited during that task. So again, similar to a recall, we see that Sportsbet is high, the TAB is high, Tom Waterhouse and so on. And again, to that is a much longer list. But you can see who is getting the visitation on the back of those searches, essentially. and again, I've just put this here and I'll gloss over it quickly. But then when I actually went and did bet on a sporting event in Google, as you can see which brands appear. Bet365 there. Number 2, Sporting Bet, which is different to Sportsbet. Sportsbet is down there on the right-hand side, and so on. And you can see then how the chips are falling in terms of who is driving traffic best from a search such as Google. Then we say to them, okay, now that you've done some research, you've done a Google search, you've gone to the sites, as most of them have. They've gone to multiple sites. In fact, if I just go back to the previous slide, that we can see that research also plays a little bit of a part. In fact, the second one, people go from a brand to research sites. So research sites such as Australian government sites and other roof bodies in relation to sports betting are also visited in quite a significant number. So for people can get more of an idea about what's involved or what the regulations are and so on. And that's quite an interesting behavior that we notice too as a result of these in-market customers. So we're going to start to understand what people's motivation is and who they're shortlisting and why they are shortlisting. So again, from the overall view, you get to see again, so Sportsbet, a lot of people are shortlisting Sportsbet. It's the most recognized. It pushes people well from Google searches and so on. Bet356, also things are falling in a similar position as to recall in some respects. But interestingly, when you have a look at the reasons why, the top reason why people chose the brands they did in a shortlist, and they can choose multiple brands obviously in a shortlist, so they can shortlist Sportsbet with TAB and Betfair and BetStar, for example. But the top reason they gave was that they saw them when they used a search engine, which is why I showed you that image before, because again, it's really key in this industry more than in any other industry that we see. People are making a decision maybe through a lack of understanding or a lack of knowledge about sports betting, those who are new to the industry, which is also why we saw the research number sort of high-ish. But familiarity and ease to use are not the primary reasons, although they are also significant reasons why people selected the brands they did amongst their shortlist. Once we've asked people about their shortlist and the reasons why they've shortlisted, we then say, okay, of that shortlist, pick one brand. And as you can see, and if I just bring that slide up before, there's probably about what looks like a 10% gap between Sportsbet and the TAB. That is somewhat shortened a little bit. They're making a little bit of ground, the TAB. So when it comes to actually making a preference, it seems that Sportsbet aren't converting quite as well as they may have liked to, or that they may think that they could have. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll have an insight as to why that is the case. But we then ask them, after they've made their final preference from their shortlist, again, why? Why did you choose those companies? And in the end, the top two reasons in similar percentages are that they've used them before and trust. And obviously that's going to be a key driver for someone who's going to put some of their hard-earned money on the line in terms of determining whether they're going to come back. If they've had a good experience, if they've been paid out appropriately in a good time frame and so on and so forth, the likelihood is that that will trump most other reasons in terms of their final preference. Also, the way bets and the way that events are presented on different sites varies somewhat. And so if people have a comfortability and a familiarity with a particular site, then they're likely to revisit that site. So again, just knowing and understanding the drivers that are making these in-market customers choose one brand over another is really, really key. I'm just going to delve a little bit deeper. One thing that all of this data comes out of our data portal, and one of the things that the data portal can do and does extremely well is filter. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you a little bit about the results of that filtering without going into how much detail about how it works and what goes on. But if I actually filter the entire study by those who shortlisted Sportsbet, so that means I'm now only looking at those participants in our study who just selected Sportsbet in their shortlist. We can also then see, interestingly, Tom Waterhouse skips above the TAB, unlike it was previously, and Sportingbet climb up. Now, what this says to us is that the key competitors to Sportsbet in this market are Tom Waterhouse and TAB. Now, they might not have thought that they were key competitors. They might have thought that Bet356 was a more significant competitor. But here we can clearly see who other people are considering at the same time that they're considering Sportsbet in this shortlisting process. We then sort of once we do that, I've also filtered the final preference by Sportsbet. So then I've taken all of those who shortlisted Sportsbet and then actually chose Sportsbet, and to see what was their motivation. And again, the betting options were easy to understand, so it was no longer about trust and prior use. Suddenly, the key driver for Sportsbet is that they have a very easy approach to understanding the betting options. Now, that is gold for them. That is a really key insight for them to be able to then understand what is motivating potential consumers to come and shop on their site effectively, or come and bet on their site. Just to flip it slightly differently, if we also notice, before we move on, that Bet365 is also a little bit down the list, and that's probably because when they're competing about betting options that are easier to understand, they fall a bit behind, and I'll show you what I mean through the digital sales experience shortly. But if we keep this shortlist filter by Sportsbet, and we now filter by those who actually chose Tab, we can see again that the drivers for the Tab customers, or the ones that are being attracted to Tab, are prior use and trust. So Tab being a well-respected old company that people have seen on the corner of their major intersection for 30, 40, 50 years, have got a very different value proposition than Sportsbet. And this is the sorts of detail and data that we can pull out of this. And this is just two tiny examples for two brands. And there's hundreds of other questions in the portal that we ask that we can then delve into behavior and understand what people are doing and what the drivers are for one brand against another, and who the competitors are, and so on. So that's that. If I can just pause there, I'm moving at a rapid pace. I know I've only got half an hour and I'm trying to cover a lot of ground. I'm really just trying to pull out some key insights and give you a flavor of what these products can do for you. So the second part of the journey overlaps that consideration phase. So now that we understand where people are considering, we want to see how well you can take them into actual purchasing. And that is what we call our sales effectiveness. And so without going into a lot of detail about this, there are essentially 3 stages in the consideration phase here: initial engagement, introducing options, facilitating decisions, and then when it comes to acting, channel selection, registration, and online purchase. And again, I won't go into a lot of detail about what they are, but we're just trying to map the customer journey onto some measurable and some quantifiable data points, essentially. And so we essentially understand that this is the way that the customer goes through the journey of the sports betting process. And if we just have a very quick look at the overall score in terms of who's doing well, again, we can see Sportsbet is up there, but also IASbet is up there. Now, that's not unsurprising, considering it seems like, from what I'm able to glean, that they are both very similar sites, probably run by the same company. It certainly looks like they are. And so, again, it wouldn't be unsurprising that their sales journeys and funnels are reasonably similar. But again, there are nuances and there are differences. And so they're not exactly apples for apples. Then you can also, again, have a look at some of the other ones. Bet365 is a bit lower down, and so on and so forth. You can just see where the overall score happens. And that's basically a rolled up score of all of the different stage scores. So if I just have a quick look at those stage comparison, and I'll just quickly focus on Bet365, Sportsbet, Tab, and Tom Waterhouse, only because they were the ones I used in the very first slide. Just to give you an idea, you can see that the TAB don't facilitate decisions very well. There's a drop right there. And Bet365 are poorer at introducing options than the others. And so, again, I want to just have a quick look at focus on some of those things in here, and what does that actually mean? So this stage introducing options breaks down into what we call 2 categories. And these 2 categories are locating and understanding event options and locating and understanding betting options. So we want to know how easy it is for consumers who turn up to your site to find the betting options and the event options, obviously, and then how easy they are to understand. Okay, so that's what we're assessing, and they're both tasks. So they're actual tasks. Some of these categories have what we call best audit criteria, best practice audit criteria, where we have a list of what we know is best practice in this industry, and then we measure your site against other sites in terms of those best practice criteria. These both have tasks as well as a little bit of audit criteria. What I want to focus on just now is locating and understanding betting options. And the reason I'm doing that is because we identified in the marketing effectiveness that Sportsbet, for example, were very good at attracting customers based on their betting options, whereas Bet365 weren't quite as good. And again, that's reflected here in the results of the sales effectiveness. So the products are supportive of each other as well, in that they overlap and that we're trying to understand the customer journey end to end. And the question then is, okay, well, what's that in a bit more detail? So taking that category and now breaking it down into a subcategory, we can see that we've got effectiveness, efficiency, satisfaction, and evaluation of this particular task, which was to locate the betting options. And we can see that Sportsbet outplays Bet365 in every instance. So they are more efficient, they're more effective, customers are much more satisfied, and that's a voice of customer. And the evaluation is incomparable almost, in that the evaluation for Bet365 from a customer perspective is quite low, under 25%. Whereas it gets 75% in terms of Sportsbet. And all of these things start to build a story around what Sportsbet are doing well, where Bet365 might be able to improve, who's leading and why, and so on. The betting options and betting support are criteria, best practice audit criteria that we measure each company against. And I won't go into exactly all of those details down below. I've pretty much said them. So I just want to pluck out one of those things, the task satisfaction, because another aspect of the product is that we actually ask people who are dissatisfied, why were you dissatisfied? And the voice of customer for Bet365 was these comments. Bad layout of web page. It was harder than I thought it would be. It wasn't clear where to start looking. The website was really useless. If I really wanted to place a bet, I would have no idea where to find the information I need. Now, again, this is going to be, gold to a brand like Bet365, who are trying to grapple with why they're not attracting people or why they're not converting people to their site. Also, the evaluation was quite low, so we asked them a list of possible reasons why they might not have been able to achieve success in this particular task. And we can see quite clearly that 48% said it took a long time to find the information, whereas 42% said finding where to start was not easy. Again, that's echoing some of the comments just put up a moment ago. And we can then, again, so that reinforces the message. So we ask a number of different questions that hopefully reinforce and reaffirm the analysis that we're seeing. And then we can actually look at the homepage. So this is Bet365's homepage, and you can see that I'm not immediately presented with options. I'm not immediately presented with events or bets. I have to start navigating. Another inconsistency is generally horse racing is in its own category, and other sports are in another category. So it's racing and sports. Yet they've sort of conflated the two in that banner across the top, because it's written sports, but there are horses in the picture. So is that the sports category or is that the horse racing category? So it's a little bit confusing. And again, I'm not clearly presented with the options in an easy to digest way. Unlike Sportsbet, that has a homepage is, here are the upcoming races down the bottom. If you're not interested in that, there are some quick links. There are some sports down below. There is a few marketing things on the side and so on. And immediately the options are there. I can see the races. I can see the betting options. I can see the odds. I can see the various aspects and so on. So again, it's reinforced, and we can then go back to the various brands and inform them about how to improve their customer experience, essentially, on their site once people get there. And then as they step through it, from not only just introducing the options, but also through to facilitating decisions, and then how the actual the betting works once they've actually selected a particular event and a bet that they want to place. And to that point, I will kind of almost end on this, end the insights really, but Bet365 make up a little bit ground, so all is not lost for them. In terms of the act phase, one of the aspects is the purchase, the online purchase stage, and we can see that actually 365's betting slip, and betting slip support outplay sports bet. So again, if we were advising sports bet how to improve their customer journey, we would obviously be looking at that act phase. So they obviously get people in the front door very well. They send people to their site very well. They introduce the options very well. But then if it's messy when it comes to the actual betting slip, again, they'll lose customers in that way because it's too annoying and too difficult, whereas people might go to another site once they've worked out how the other aspects work. So these all play into these the mindset and the behavior and the experience of those in-market customers who are just recently made a bet on sports or are about to make a bet on sports. And so all of this information is really quite useful and invaluable when you're trying to understand the journey and the experience. Just a penultimate slide, just to remind you or reinforce or just show you again the 4 inputs that we have into the sales effectiveness product, which is a best practice audit. But we have the customer behavior in the tasking. We have a customer audit in terms of those questions and those voice bubbles of what the customer is saying. And we also have customer attitudes. So we ask people at the very beginning of all of our studies, what are the most important aspects to you on a sports betting website? Is it an easy betting slip? Is it options that are easy to understand, and so on and so forth? And we get a long list. And as a result of that, then we can put particular emphasis on various parts of the benchmark. So the benchmark is weighted. So it's not apples for apples across each of the stages, but rather as we understand what is becoming more or less important to consumers, then we tailor the benchmark towards those things that are more important to give you a most insightful and accurate figure around what we believe your customer experience is in terms of your consumers. One last thing I mentioned a bit earlier, the portal. So all of this data is available in the portal, both for the digital marketing effectiveness product and the digital sales effectiveness product. And it opens up with a dashboard something like this. And on the left-hand side is the sales journey. On the right-hand side, we can see a bit of the marketing journey. And so essentially you get access to this. We pull out a lot of the data to a much higher level in the front end, so you don't have to go digging for it. We try to make it a little bit easier for you. We also include other metrics that aren't global reviews specific, such as customer effort. Some of you might be familiar with the SUS, or the system usability scale. Again, you can see that in the middle of the left-hand pane. And so you get an understanding too of not only just the metrics that we measure, but also other internationally recognized measures. We also have a WPS, which is very similar to the NPS, but for websites rather just than for branding overall. And again, too, you can get an understanding of what's happening on your site from a number of different perspectives. And so if you're just in the management position and you just want to know the headline items and the top numbers, we present them to you in this way. Otherwise, you can go into the portal into great detail, even through those filtering options, to really understand what your potential customers are doing, who you're competing with, and how it all goes from there. So with that, and 2 minutes to spare, I can take a breath now, and I can pass you back to Shay, and he will close it out.
Great, thanks, Jeremy. You can really going
face there.
After going through such a fast pace,
I'm glad we were able to keep it to the 30 minutes.
Folks,
if you've got any questions as a result of today's session, those are my details on the screen. It should be actually in the invite as well for today's webinar. Just keep a heads up in your inboxes. There is a promotional offer to actually celebrate the anniversary of our global reviews portal, that is. So please take a look at that. That'll be celebrating global reviews portal with some historical data from 2010. We assume this will be quite useful for yourselves.
Just like to thank everyone for their attendance, and thanks particularly to Jeremy for preparing that. Lots of insights.
Not a lot of time to get through them, but we managed to do it.
So with that,
we'll sign off. Thank you, everybody, and hope to talk to you soon.